I was on my way here, and I saw this guy walking down the street, and he had a short sleeve shirt on and shorts. Noah, what's the temperature today?
Well, when I got up, it was 15, so I assume it's 15.
It's 15 degrees.
On the way here, it's probably colder than that because the sun wasn't up, so
But he had a mask on.
I've got to keep his face warm.
Well, I would assume he was concerned about getting sick.
Catching cold
Yeah. He was like
as opposed to being cold.
walking around in 15-degree weather with a short sleeve shirt and a pair of shorts. And he wasn't like one of those big guys, that's like wears shorts all year long. I don't get those guys. I don't understand what's up with that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Gird Your Loins. I'm Brett Lynn, and this is Noah Zerung.
Hello?
How do you spell Zerung again?
Zehrung.
What's your social security number? Do I pronounce that right? I don't know. I've been saying it for a long time.
I don't even care. I say Zerung like Aaron with a Z and a G. Z at the beginning and G at the end because of things, but I don't know.
Zerung?
Yeah, some people say Zerung, and I don't know. I put the break at the R because we have family that during World War II changed their name to be more English to Zering, which doesn't sound at all English. So I think so, but because of that, it seems to me like the break is probably at the R, but
Right.
but no one knows. So
I don't know why I'm so interested in people's last names. I do it all the time. So today we are going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about right now the problem of being too nice. Too nice.
divisive nice.
Divisive nice. Yeah. So in the context of helping people, and so I'll just go right into what I'm thinking about with this is that often you'll have somebody in church who needs a hand with something, and we can talk about this in relation to like sin issues too, and why that can be a problem. But just to make this clear to people listening, so I want you to think about any time that you've been out on the street and maybe like a panhandler, a homeless person, a hobo, a vagabond, a vagrant, whatever you call them, street person.
A bum.
Well, man, we're already trashing this poor guy. Like, I don't even know who he is. So a person in need, and they're asking for money, and everybody's heard this. It's like, oh, this person was asking me for money, but I gave them food. I was like, I can't give them money. Usually the excuse is like they might use the money for drugs or something like that. And so now what's going on there in their mind when that happens is, well, this person's asking me for help in a particular way, but I don't think that's actually what they need. I don't think that's actually going to help this person. In fact, that might actually hurt the person. So if I just give them what they want, I could actually be doing more damage to their life by giving them money. And so I'm going to buy them a Big Mac instead. Lots of people do that. Lots of people make that common sense moral assessment right there on the spot and go, I can't just do anything. I have to do the actual I have to do the right thing if it's actually going to be a help to this person. Right? Does that make sense? So, you've been studying at Karen, going into pastoring, we hope someday, and
David was anointed king, and then it was 2 years before he was playing music in Saul's quarters, and then another 15 before he was king. So I've got some time to get. I've got some time.
You're gonna do the David.
I've only been I've only been in college for 4 years. So
yeah, and and Simba had that song I just can't wait to be king. It's the same thing. It's kind of the same, actually, if you think about it. It's kind of similar story.
They're just ripping off the Bible.
You're not Simba. So, what do you think about that? I mean, it can be a tricky thing to help people, and we have to be wise when we do it. We can't just well, obviously, we don't want to just throw money at problems,
Right.
And we can see that politically, and in the world, or sometimes when I've talked to people about critical race theory stuff and things like that. It's like, well, these are the things that we want to affect societal change because these things will definitely help. And if you take a step back for a second and go, well, wait a minute, is that actually going to help anybody? And I feel like my whole life, looking at whether it's politics or stuff in the church, that always seems to be the argument. And then the one side, they've always got this very emotional plea. It's like, well, we have to help these people. We have to help these people. I'm like, I'm with you. I totally agree. We should definitely help people. But the question is, how is the best way to help somebody, right?
Right.
So I remember having a discussion with somebody sometime about, well, you'll see this a lot of times where I think it's come up with Tim Keller a lot, where he'll say things like, the right wing, they have very strong feelings about the truth and moral purity and things like that. And the left, they're just all totally compassionate, and they just want to help people. And that's why some people lean toward communism as Christians. And it's like, well, is that true? That's the great part of being the side that appreciates truth, right? You can always ask that question, right? Is that actually true? Does communism actually help people, do you think?
Absolutely not.
No?
No. It's fundamentally designed to harm the neighbor.
Yeah.
The whole point of it is it violates 2 of the 10 commandments.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Coveting your neighbor's donkey and or just any of his possessions.
yep.
And then stealing.
And it's at least 2.
At
It's
least 2,
usually
yeah.
also killing people.
Right.
So
Right. Well, that's the fun part of communism. And the sad part. So, it comes down to that question a lot of times when you're trying to do be a help to people, when you're trying to counsel them through things, or you're trying to give them good advice. The couple times that I've been called in to counsel people or talk to them or get them out of a real depressive state and things like that, it's you have to say the hard things to people. In the back of your mind, you've always got it sitting in your head. It's I really need to tell them this hard thing. It's almost like the thing you really don't want to say, that button that you really don't want to push, that real the sore underbelly of the whole issue. It's just the place you don't want to go. It would be so much easier to just go to somebody's house and talk about sports and make small talk and hey, you doing all right? Okay, buddy. I'll see you. I'll see you later. That would be a breeze. But the hard work of really helping people is challenging them. So you're not a terribly nice person, I've noticed. You often can.
I think I can go too far.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I can fall off too far. Although you know what, a lot of times, it's when you go too far off the side of being anti-nice. Wasn't there a word for that? Being mean, blunt.
Yeah, if you're too blunt and you're not prudent about how you're being blunt, it's
lacking in tact.
You can be mean, and that's a problem.
Yeah. But those things, to be honest, I I think I think are redeemable in some way. Like I can at least ask for forgiveness for that. Right? I can ask for forgiveness for being too mean. But hopefully, if my meanness has just fallen off on the wrong side, and it was directed at getting to that soft, sensitive underbelly of a situation, then at least I've breached the topic. Does that make sense?
Right.
When I'm a coward, or I'm just concerned about how somebody like not hurting somebody's feelings, or I'm just concerned. Most of the time, in my case, I'm embarrassed for myself. I don't want to be in an uncomfortable conversation. I don't want to have that uncomfortable talk, and I'm worried about what they're going to think about me by touching on those subjects and bringing those things up. So it's kind of like a cowardice that's wrapped up in just concern for myself. And then like those are the things I regret. I don't often regret being mean because I'm usually pretty quick to realize like, ooh, like I was mean. I should apologize, ask for forgiveness, and then once that's done, well, then like we can move on. And I don't like stay up at night thinking about that. I stay up at night thinking about I really should have said, you need to stop this behavior. Like you need to go reconcile this relationship with this person. That kind of thing. I don't know. Have you ever had any situations, even like I was talking about, like out on the street or like helping anybody with anything?
I mean, I've had a few times where I've had to talk people through something like depression or things like
Yeah.
that. Being someone who struggled with depression myself,
Ditto.
and so when someone else is struggling with it, I've got people. Like I've had times where someone was like, "Hey, this person that we both know is struggling with that, and I never have. I know you're not as close to them as I am, but could you go talk to them or like try to develop a relationship
Yeah.
with them?" And
I've been the guy that people call at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
I had a few of those.
Yeah. Like, hey, I met this guy at this bar and he's like homeless and depressed. Can you come talk to him? uh, and it's like, I don't want to say no because I appreciate the fact that they thought I might have, something to speak to this person.
Right.
So I don't want to like, oh, like it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you guys have been drinking and this is probably not going to be the most productive use of my time and probably not going to be very productive for you guys either. But I really just, I don't want to let them down and just show that I appreciate that, like, yeah, like I'm willing to talk to somebody and share the gospel with them. Even if they've been drinking, even that. So there's been a couple of like really weird circumstances, and they don't ever pan out very well. Yeah, there's just so many times, especially with the couple times that I've dealt with men that are homeless and they're like, there's almost always drug issues involved there, and they're not usually cognizant like that, or they're not processing things very well. And then there's also like years and years and years and years and years of bad decisions that usually lead up to that moment. People aren't generally born into homelessness and stay in homelessness and then end up also in homelessness. It's not usually the track of somebody's life. There's usually family issues. I've talked to guys before where I say, look, is there somewhere that you could go? Is there somebody in your family I could call for you, that could take you in? I could talk to them for you, anything like that. And they've told me, everybody's dead. All my family's dead. They're all dead. And then it's like, really, everybody, like, like every single person you've ever known is dead. like, what do you like? Murder She Wrote. Like everybody. Yeah, and then after you talk to them for a while longer, they'll say like, my sister, she doesn't want to talk to me or everything. You're like, wait a minute, hold on a second. I thought you said everybody was dead. So there's always a bunch of lies and stuff that go along with it too. It's so hard to unravel that. But what does the Bible say? What does the Bible say about people that won't work, right?
Shouldn't eat.
If man won't work, neither should he eat. Let that guy's belly be his guide, right? Toward that end of getting help. So, anything else you want to add to that?
I don't know. I think that, maybe only to clarify the very end there, just with, if a man won't work, he shouldn't eat.
Right. Yeah.
And if
yeah.
someone can't,
Yep.
there's a,
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Big
Just to be clear.
difference. Yeah. Well, and you know what I was thinking about
Just
that.
to predict the objection.
They'll always find that. But what about this situation?
I found that people that are on the we need to be nice to everybody side of everything, like overly nice, there's a I find this with politically with the really like the left, like
Yeah.
the bloc
Yep.
uniparty left, like they tend to be the same way, where there's this, you say, like to make it easier to explain in terms of transgender issues, when you say, look, a man's a man, a woman's a woman, men should compete against men, women should compete against women.
Oh, we just got blocked on YouTube.
Right.
It's gone.
And that's they'll say,
I lost my whole channel.
I know, oops. They'll say, but what, they always go for the but what about, and then it's this extreme example.
Yeah.
To try to invalidate the rule.
Right.
And
Well,
so
you see the same thing in the abortion issue too. It's like,
right.
what
yeah.
what about this situation? What if they can't take care of the baby? And like each hurdle you jump over, it's like there's
But what
no.
if the baby will have red hair?
Yeah. Right.
It's
like each hurdle you jump over, there's never any acknowledgement that you just like sunk that battleship. It was like, well, I can come up with an even more extreme. Like, oh, you had an answer for that? Like, well, I'll get really weird, okay, till I find something, that you're gonna have a hard time figuring out what I'm talking about, which just seems to be confusing the issue. It was like like smoke screen, goodbye. So yeah, like not being able to work, like totally different situation. Although, I've seen oftentimes that one passage about abandonment gets abused and brought into the topic of marriage, and I've seen it was
the man who abandons his family is worse than an unbeliever.
Right, which actually isn't talking about marriage at all. Not really. It's talking about a family, right? Which involves a lot of people in a family unit. But the passage is not talking about marriage there I believe in that context. But yeah, so the man that abandons his family or has a family member in need, right?
Right.
Because that's what it's talking about. And that person is worse than an unbeliever. And then they'll say, well, if that person is an unbeliever, then and that person then has abandoned his family, then it's okay to divorce that person, right? And I think in that context, it's talking about your family members. It's talking about people like a homeless guy, like some fella. This is why I brought it up. In the context of somebody who can't work, right? Who has a disability, who has something that's holding them back from finding work or getting work or whatever, or even just the fact that they've dug themselves in such a hole that they're homeless, and you're not doing what you can to help that person, then yes, I would say. So for a lot of these guys that are out on the street, if they do have a legitimate reason why they're on the street, it's also not really like there should be a family member there somewhere who's abandoned that person to being on the street if there's a legitimate reason,
Right.
and they're just and they've just dropped the ball completely, and then nobody holds those guys accountable either. I like watch a lot of Cops, and there's always like they always are asking. It's like, isn't there somebody in your family? Isn't there somebody we can call and you can spend the night there or anything? And this is the sad reality with a lot of these people is like they've just either burned all their bridges, or they're just so ashamed of themselves they don't want to go back to their family and
Right.
reconcile and that kind of stuff. So
On a quick glaze of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
passage, it's 1 Timothy 5:8. It's in the section about honoring widows and giving
Right.
instruction to the
Yep.
widows, and then it talks about like a woman who's dishonoring because she's not willing to take care of herself, and then
Right.
it says right after that, but if anyone, presumably I believe it's because it says his own, I think it could be either way, but
Right.
I think it's predominantly talking about a man.
Yeah.
It says if anyone is not willing to take care of his own, especially his household. And I think that in the context, just on a quick glaze, I don't want to stake my claim here, but I think that
right,
it is talking about primarily his own in the sense of
kids, wife,
the
and kids.
church.
Yeah.
I think
oh,
the
or
church
the
because
church
it's
even.
because it's talking about the widows in the context.
Oh, okay.
And then he says, especially his household. And so I think that even that's where it's saying, especially if you don't
Right,
take care
right.
of your family,
Right.
then. But I think that it's talking about, like, if you've got widows in your church and you're like, pfft, but and then it says he's denied the faith. He's worse than an unbeliever. So I think
Okay.
that's,
Yeah, that
because if
makes-
you're
that
not
makes a
willing to
lot of
take
sense.
care of your own, like, sister in Christ, but then it says even more, like, his own household. Although I would want to dig into that more to
Sure.
because I could even say there, like, it's possible that when he says especially his own household, that could even be the church too. Like,
Yeah.
so it's I don't know. I don't want to stake my claim there, but I
There's
do
a couple
think
of
that
passages
it's
like that where it's like helping especially those in the faith, or especially
Right.
what does Jesus whoever helps the least of these my brothers, and there seems to be like these varying degrees of intensity in like this
Right.
circle. It's like you have this
concentric
responsibility.
circles.
Yeah, you have this responsibility going outward toward people, and like the further away they get from that like family unit, the less
less, but
responsibility you
yeah.
have toward that person. And I think what a lot of people forget is that
Oops.
a lot of people forget is that they'll want to sling their resources to the far reaches of space when they're it's almost Jordan Peterson-ish, if you think about it, like
I was just thinking about how there's one of the next things you wanted to talk about was the Gospel Coalition, and this
Oh, yeah.
is involved in that in a
Yeah.
political way. But
Yep. Yeah, so like I was just saying, like, Jordan Peterson, like clean your room, right? Good. You want to go fix the world, like, and you don't clean your room, like you got dirty dishes in the sink, and it's not like he can't. He's always saying like he has a dirty room too, but like you should be thinking about that at least, like
Right.
be a little bit humble here, like if your room is a mess, your house is in order. It's the same principle Jesus talks about with the. If you have a plank in your eye, you're worried about the speck in your brother's eye. That circle got real small all of a sudden around your eyes.
Right.
Deal with that first. That's your priority. Now you can see clearly. Now you can go and help your brother. So yeah, we didn't want to front load this with the Gospel Coalition, but so we want to talk about something a little less political, but. I wanted to talk about, and I think I've been yammering on. Let's start with you. Your impression. I don't want to say the last 20 years because you're how old?
I'm 23. I'll be
23.
24
So
soon.
you were 20. So
I had to
let's
think about that for a minute.
yeah. Let's just say I thought I was 43 the other day at jiu-jitsu. Somebody was telling me that they were 43 and they were born in 1980. And I was like, I was born in 79. Am I 43 also? Or like, wait a minute. And they were wrong. I'm still 42.
I've gotten to the point where it's like, once you get past certain age, because when you're a kid, you're like, oh man, I can't wait to be. So you're just counting down the days.
Yeah.
Once I hit 21, I was like, I don't care. And
You'll-
so
you'll-
the last 2 years, it's been like, oh, it's my birthday. Wait, how old am I? Oh.
Yeah. You'll start thinking about that when
I'm starting to get old.
closer to 40.
The only thing I care about is I think it's when I'm 25, I'll be able to rent a car.
Oh yeah,
But, like,
you'll be
then
a
I'll-
real adult.
Then I'll be really finally an adult.
I like how the United States government doesn't you're be 18 and not considered an adult enough that you can be
Go
handed
die.
a gun and go die for your country. But the
can't
rental car
drink.
companies at least paid attention to brain formation in young men. They're like, no, your brain's not done forming until 25. You can't rent a car until you're 25.
Although what's interesting about that is that that's just across the board. So it's like women can't do it either. until they-
Right? Yeah,
right.
yeah. Why do the women's brain finish forming
Earlier.
earlier? Does it?
Yeah.
It's done. That makes sense. So,
I
but
think
let's
it's
think
like
about
3
this.
years or so.
The from the time that you were saved, or the time that you became aware of the greater Christian world, how old do you think you were when that?
When you say the greater Christian world, what do you mean?
Like, it wasn't like there was more going on than just at the church that you were at, and there was like this.
16.
16ish. Okay.
Maybe younger than that, but definitely 16.
Right. Interesting. So, oh man, I could get in so much trouble trying to think when I got married. So we just recently discovered that the Gospel Coalition was founded in 2005, right?
Yes.
It was D.A. Carson.
What do you mean recently? We've known this for years.
No, as in like we just looked it up. D.A. Carson and Tim Keller, right? Forming the Gospel Coalition, 2005. When was I married? I was married in 2003. Yes. My daughter was born in 2005. And I think I remember hearing about the Gospel Coalition at our old church. I think that was the first time I had heard the word. But I think there was a conference going on. And it was like the first time I heard somebody mention John Piper. I'd never heard about John Piper
That's
before.
actually, well, I guess maybe that's not surprising.
And there were people talking about it, and they were so excited. They're like, I'm going to go. Or like other people were like, I'm going to watch it online. And like, I'm going to watch John Piper. And I'm like, who is this guy? Who's John Piper? I've never heard of this fellow before.
Well, the reason I was about to say, well, that's interesting is because he had a peak of fame and then dropped off the map, sort of, and then exploded back onto the map around that time.
Yeah,
so
that's probably
there was a lull, and so I was like, well, that's surprising. But then I realized that's the beginning of his, yeah.
Well, you got to remember, I was in the PCUSA, so we didn't know anything. we were totally ignorant to like anything else going on outside of the PCUSA.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird.
And inside, honestly.
And inside, yeah. Well, no, once I became aware of what was going on inside the PCUSA, I left. I left at 18 years old, and I don't even know if I was a believer or not. I suspect I wasn't. But when they were like, hey, let's take a vote on whether Jesus is divine or not. And then they published it in their own magazine, and I'm sitting there at breakfast eating and reading their newsletter, and I'm like, you know, what are they doing? What they voted? Oh, he won. Okay.
I didn't know he was up for re-election.
Yeah,
Like,
okay. That goes in the trash, and that's like I was like, give me a pencil, give me a pen and paper. I'm gonna write my resignation out. Like 18 years old, like I want nothing to do with you people ever again.
I renounce my Canadian citizenship.
you lunatics voting on Jesus' divinity. But anyway, as far as you, where we're at, so like 16, and you're seeing this, like, I don't know, like, what were like the big influences on you, like maybe online? Did we have the internet back then? I guess we did.
I would assume so.
I don't know.
Since it was 2014.
Did the internet come before flip phones? So long ago.
So like theological influences on me.
Sure. I mean, like, who were you watching? Like, if there was anybody that you were like particularly influenced by, that wasn't part of your church. Like, you know, somebody you might be listening to when you were younger.
Oh man, it's hard to think back that far. John Piper was one of them.
Yeah.
John MacArthur. Lots of Johns.
Yeah. There just are in general.
Yeah. At that point, there was a few others, but I can't think of their names because I've stopped listening to those people at this point. So.
Right. Yeah, I think...
And they've stopped being, like, of any importance, like,
sure.
in the sense of, like, people knowing who they are.
I think I started listening to John Piper, and that's kind of where it started for me. It was, like, the gateway drug to understanding Calvinism.
He is for a lot of people.
Yeah. And... actually, you know what? I might have listened to something from him, and then I think it was probably Mark Driscoll. To be honest,
I dodged that bullet.
Yeah.
Completely. I mean, granted, I also was coming into all this right as that was collapsing anyway.
I stopped listening to him.
Wait,
just because I found other people to listen to.
When did they collapse? Was it 2009?
I don't know. I was already done. But I think that was Mark Driscoll was the first person I started listening to who was like preaching from a Calvinistic perspective on soteriology. So I was at that time I was like, I've never heard this before. This is really strange. And my camera just shut off. Of course it did. That's what my camera does. Come back to me, baby. Bingo. It's like, you're talking about Mark Driscoll? But, you know.
Demonetized.
Whatever. I'm on the other coast. And any of his nonsense wasn't bothering me. I was just listening to his stuff online.
Yeah, and at that point we didn't know about his their church had a group message board where he went under a pseudonym and just like abused people. It's awful, but there's a part of you that goes, this is really not good at all.
No.
But it's kind of funny.
It is kind of funny.
It's, especially because he was calling people slurs.
Oh man.
In his own congregation.
That's just wicked. That's just really mean. But it was interesting coming out of a very nominal Presbyterian setting, which is there a word worse than nominal? But I
apostate.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll go on record as being in a conservative Presbyterian church. I think that most of the mainline church is apostate. So
oh sure, yeah.
It's worse than nominal for the most part.
Yeah. So and years of
not all gotta
listening to sermons that just were not like just gloriously infused with like gospel language, you know, to like stodgy Presbyterian types. I was like, that's what like charismatics and Baptists do, like yelling at people from the pulpit and stuff like that. You know, like actually treating sin like it's a problem and like that needs to be dealt with by like an incredible act of God, you know, and actually giving that the kind of energy in your preaching that it deserves. It's like no. That's like for you know, yeah, Southerners, you know, not Northeast Presbyterians.
That's for people who care about the Bible.
Yeah, yeah. So, even that aspect of it, what was like, oh, this guy's getting a little carried away here. But listening to John Piper, listening to guys who had a great love for the gospel, and these guys formed this thing, the Gospel Coalition, right? And it was like a different movement than what, they kind of did a sort of a documentary, like that Calvinist documentary. Did you ever see that?
That was Les Lanphier, and I don't know if the Gospel Coalition was involved in that.
Right.
I'm not sure. I don't want to say. They may
No.
have had some
Yeah.
involvement in funding it, but
Right. I mean, like the documentary itself kind of, to me, documented
what was going on?
what was going on, like how
the
like,
Young Restless Reformed
the
thing.
Young Restless Reform thing, and excuse me, I remember like hearing that term for the first time, and just being like newly baptized into cage stage Calvinism myself. I was super jazzed up about this. I thought it was fantastic. It felt like having this big organization, and it seemed like with like the Gospel Coalition, you got all these big names contributing to things, writing articles and stuff like that. I was like, I can trust these guys. I can read their articles. I can be safe. I can share these with my friends. Feel like people have questions like, oh, who should I listen to on this or that? And it's like, oh, no problem. Like anybody from the Gospel Coalition, just like I can't imagine that anybody that would be associated with those guys would be off their nut or something. And to me, it was like you had the mainline Protestantism. You had this like kumbaya ecumenicalism among them. Nobody really pressing the gospel. Nobody really being concerned about it or its real impact on the world. What it meant about our sin. And really like I would say like the moral majority years, like the Newt Gingrich right wing Christianity,
The moral, not so much majority.
yeah, not so much moral majority, but winning. I mean, like they got the Contract with America thing passed, right? Got some half decent years out of Congress with those guys. But so then it's like, okay, well, there's this Gospel Coalition. They're preaching the gospel. It's like, focus on the gospel. So to me, it felt like, it's from 2005 or whatever. Or I do like to break things up into chunks. Like you have like this 20-year span from the moment John Piper, yelled at everybody about seashells to
I forgot about that.
to now.
I just think of him as being like, don't play video games.
Well, that was the "Don't waste your life" message, right?
I forgot about the seashells, though.
Yeah. That he had a good point. Seashells, Lord. Nobody knows what we're talking about. With seashells, but from that moment to a few years ago, or I'd say MLK 50.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well,
I felt like the message unified among anybody who could be slightly attached to the Reformation at all was the gospel's what's at stake. The gospel is important. The world will change as the gospel advances, right? And it felt like everybody was sort of on the same page with that, where it was like, and I'd even seen it in practice in Bible studies I've had. I've had people tell me I've changed my views on abortion because of the Bible study that we did. And I'm like, I never talked about abortion ever. And I'm like, yeah, but we were just studying the attributes of God, and I can't reconcile my views on abortion with who God is. I'm like, wow, okay, like I got one. like somebody actually was convinced about
Deeper
something.
thinker than I ever
Yeah,
would be.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how'd you get there? Like,
But like somebody was actually convinced of something politically without ever having to go into politics, just because I was, preaching the gospel and confronting them with the God that actually exists. So I was like a big believer in that. I was like, man, like absolutely, like we really don't need to press the politics stuff. We don't have to go that route. And then MLK 50 happened, and I was like, wait, what's going on here? Why are we talking about political things all of a sudden? It doesn't make any sense. Why did we go from politics or away from politics to let's talk about the gospel. Let's talk about the practical things about the gospel that that we can preach to ourselves, all those kind of things. And then it's just, oh, well, you know what? Social issues are actually gospel issues. And at that moment, the first time I heard somebody say that, I was like, oh, that's what we've been doing all this time. Okay, I see. I see the game now. It took me 20 years to figure it out, but I got you. This was a distraction. This was, you guys need to shut up about politics. But the minute we find a way to frame the issue, to make the gospel about what we want politically, now it's a gospel issue. You see the difference? And I went, wow, like that was not only incredibly clever, but incredibly wicked at the same time. You've twisted the gospel into something just as a political device. It's like,
right.
It's almost like
The Christian psyop.
Yeah. Or like it's almost like what they were accusing the moral majority of doing. It's like, oh, like you guys, like all you care about is this world and these politics and all that. It's like, you've forgotten your first love. You're lukewarm. Like let's knock that all off and let's talk about the gospel. And everybody kind of went, oh man, I didn't realize I was doing that. Like, okay, good point. Let's talk about the gospel. And then I was like, well, from left field. And
The problem is, I think they were right, and then I
Sure.
think that they were. It's just that it's like now it's like, oh, I see an issue in the world, so now I'm gonna do what I was saying was wrong
Yep.
for so long. But we see it's different because it's a gospel issue,
right.
and not a, well, if you're a Christian, you should act like one, and then it's
Yeah.
and it's like
yeah.
no, this is a gospel issue, and yeah.
And there's so many other things to go along with that that drive me crazy. Even in missions, some of the books that I've read on missions where they were so against how you can't change the culture. You can't that's their culture. It's like, well, I thought that when we preach the gospel, and like it's supposed to, like I was seeing it affect people politically in my own sphere of influence, right? I was seeing people
Right.
getting a better grasp of who God was and getting a better grasp of the gospel and changing their politics, which I assume if that happened to 50,000 people, that would change politics quite dramatically in an area, right?
Yeah.
And then, but when I go preach the gospel in a third world country, I'm not supposed to expect to see anything change.
All cultures are beautiful.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah.
Which isn't exactly true, but I mean, obviously, there's aspects of many cultures that are great, but like, and that's the problem is that if you say, look, some cultures are not good,
Right.
people
Yeah.
go, that's racist. And it's like, no. Some cultures, because they're founded on Christian principles, are objectively better, possibly hypocritical because of the people that live in that culture, only
yep.
surface level,
not
but
gonna
it's
avoid that.
objectively better than something else. That doesn't mean that I want to go in there and be like, well, you're not Western, therefore you need to change. It's
Stop wearing sandals.
it's,
know?
I don't even know. It's more like it's stop, like, I don't know, eating animals that will get you sick.
That's
like, or something like we know that, or
right.
don't be harming like
Give
there
them
are cultures that still do things like what one person or groups of people do things to other groups of people in that culture that's bad. And it's like,
I've
so
been studying a lot of European history. I'm like pre-Middle Ages, Middle Ages, that kind of stuff. The Danes and Vikings and the Saxons and the Normans and all that stuff.
Normans.
It's so crazy. The French, and I've discovered that when the French win battles against the British, they're Normans. It just sounds better. We didn't lose to the French. The French didn't come over here and beat us at the Battle of Hastings. It was the Normans that did
They
it.
just appeared out of thin air again.
Yeah. Which kingdom? What was this Norman kingdom? Anyway, no, I think there were definitely a group of people called the Normans, but they were French. So you've got the church moving throughout Europe, and I've got like these mass conversions of people, and political reasons and things like that, But you've got man, like it's so hard to put ourselves in the context in history of like how this all actually panned out. Like how did this all actually work, and what was it like? I can't even grasp what it was like just trying to survive through a winter, yet alone, let alone like how do you go live with a group of people you like just learn their language, and now you're trying to share the gospel with them and be like their spiritual shepherd,
Right.
with people who don't even know how to read, and you have to explain the gospel to these people who have been involved in druidism and shamanism and witchcraft and all different kinds of paganistic stuff, all the different varieties, all through Scotland and Ireland, and down through the southern part of Britain, and the Vikings had their own, the Norse and the Danes had their whole different mythology and stuff. But like, well, that took 1,000 years for the church to penetrate those areas into a way where you now start seeing that there's like some actual Christians coming out of those
Right.
countries. As I'm sure that a lot of the people living in mud huts at the time who just came out of the oppression of the Druids didn't have a firm grasp on what that monk exactly was going on about,
Right.
but it was going on anyway, and it had an impact. It had a long lasting impact, and so the culture changed dramatically because of that. But then as that culture forms, and the West moves into the North America and stuff like that, and it becomes another thing, and then a couple of different revivals and things happen in the U.S., and we go, all right, now we're going to share the gospel in this other place, and it's like, oh no, your culture's terrible. The American one, American Western Christianity, that culture is awful, and you ought not try to make any of them comport to what you guys have been doing. And it's like, but the gospel's been at work over here,
Right.
having an impact for 1,500 years. And it's like, how much of that is just us as a people, and how much of that is a work of the gospel changing, just by God's providence? I don't know.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah,
It's
it's
hard.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And I think a lot of it is like, I mean, clearly there's good things that the gospel has done, and then there's things that because of those good things and the sinfulness of people, bad things. And it's like, of course there's bad things. Of course we shouldn't go over and like be like, you need to be like America. We shouldn't go into Afghanistan and be like, become America, become a democracy.
Right. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't go over there as like, if we're being missionaries that to a nation that oppresses women, we shouldn't. That doesn't mean that as the gospel is introduced to a community of people, that to those people that have become Christian that we should not say, all right, now there are different things that Christianity teaches that you need to do than what you're used to in your culture, because the gospel
Right.
is not part of any culture. It's its own thing.
Right. Right.
And it's supposed to shape your culture, but it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunately, what we did in Afghanistan was raise the rainbow flag and
yeah.
and then watch it all burn down, which was great. What a great year, Joe. Good job. Good job, buddy.
True phenomena, shower to pressure.
And he has a way with words, I'll tell you what. All right, man. We've almost gone an hour. That was good. We got to figure out what we're going to talk about next time.
Yeah.
All right. And hopefully somebody might give us a, hey, you know what I never say? And it's like nobody's going to get to this point of the video. I know it because nobody's going to watch this long. But I think you're supposed to say, you're supposed to like, share, and subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe. Hit the bell. Smash the like button. I swore I was never going to say that. But you're supposed to do those things. Otherwise nobody will ever see it. All right. Thanks, everybody. Don't be too nice. Gospel Public was trash.